Vanilla extract is so easy to make. You take some cut up vanilla beans, put them in vodka, and just wait for a month or two, shaking the jar once a week or so. Home cooks love doing this, but is it worth it? Is it any better than store-bought? If I've learned anything in my taste tests and research, what vanilla tastes the best is ultimately up to personal preference. So I do think homemade extract probably has value. But it's also worth noting that this isn't at all how most vanilla extract is actually made. It depends on the producer, but some do a slow infusion, some use heat or pressure to speed up the process, some use cold alcohol percolation in multiple passes at varying concentrations. Some extract is aged for months or years to help mellow out harsh notes and get a more balanced flavor. Recipes for homemade extract vary widely too. Some call for 2 vanilla beans per cup of vodka, some use 8 beans or more, some use rum or whiskey instead of vodka, some say it's ready after a month, others say you should wait at least 4 months. I was most surprised by a recipe from Cook's Illustrated, which heats the vodka first, pours it over a single bean, and lets it sit for just a week before straining. I think 1 bean for a batch seems pretty weak. I am suspicious about that. But while most recipes don't call for heating the vodka, there's probably something to that. While it makes sense that heat could damage some flavor compounds, it also makes sense that other compounds might be more soluble and easier to extract. Like coffee. You can brew coffee hot or cold. It extracts different flavors each way, but one isn't better than the other. It's a matter of preference. Hot extraction happens faster, which is useful for mass production, and there are even recipes for sous vide extract that can be done in just 4 hours. Maybe combining liquid from both hot and cold extract would offer the best of both worlds. Like that documentary Ramen Heads, where it shows how in Japan some chefs make their soup by mixing broths from different batches to get the best balance of flavor. I wouldn't be surprised if some vanilla producers did that. All of this to say, it's more art than science. There's no perfect or best vanilla extract. While applying heat or even trying to set up something with percolation sounds interesting, the simplicity of add beans to vodka and wait is what makes the DIY so appealing. Anyone can do it. There is some debate about whether the resulting liquid can be called an extract. Some say it's just an infusion. A bit of research leads me to believe technically the most accurate term would be tincture. But semantics aside, you definitely can save money with homemade extract. You can get a pack of premium vanilla beans and a bottle of vodka for $25. Ounce for ounce, your homemade extract will cost about half the price of most premium brands, maybe even less. It keeps well for a long time, and more than that, it's renewable. I'd never heard of this before, but if you use a teaspoon of extract for a recipe, just top it off with a teaspoon of fresh liquor and keep it going. If you do enough baking that you go through a bottle of extract every couple of weeks, you could actually save a lot of money. And of course, you'll feel all fuzzy inside that you made it yourself. There's that benefit too. But does homemade extract actually taste as good as store-bought? I don't know, so here's my attempt to try to judge that as objectively as I can. I'm testing 4 different extracts. I've got the store-bought McCormick's, the fancy Nielsen Massey, and then a homemade version that was slowly infused for 2 months at room temperature. And I also went ahead and made a batch of the sous vide version. Most recipes for sous vide only called for 1 bean per cup of liquor, and that seemed really weak to me. So I went ahead and put the same amount of beans and liquor in both of these to give them hopefully a fair comparison. I've got cookies so I can test the baked application, and also panna cotta, cold application, so hopefully I can get the best sense of the flavor from that. I think I know how this is going to go with the cookies, knowing that in previous tests there were very minimal differences between different vanilla products with cookies. Now the Nielsen Massey, the homemade extract. I can't say I'm noticing any difference at all there. The sous vide extract. To me, there is no difference in flavor between these cookies. Even knowing that these were all made with completely different vanilla products and knowing which one was which, trying to notice a difference in flavor, I can't get anything. Maybe the panna cotta will be a different story. McCormick's, good baseline. Nielsen Massey, homemade, slow infused. I'm not really noticing anything. Let me try the sous vide version. The flavor in the sous vide one is really good. It's actually coming across really well. Let me compare these two homemade versions side by side again. Yeah, I can't honestly say that one of these is better than the other. That quickly extracted version actually does hold up really well. So based on this, I would say for myself at least that homemade extract definitely is as good as store-bought. It's not any better, I wouldn't say, but it is quite a bit cheaper, and I do like that. And I was really pleasantly surprised by this sous vide version that only takes a couple hours to make. I think as long as you use really good beans, it'll turn out really good. If you want to make homemade extract, there's no perfect recipe you have to follow, but here are some recommendations of what I think are important. Vodka is the most common liquor to use because it's pretty neutral, so the vanilla won't be competing for flavor like it might with whiskey or rum, but it's up to you. Anything 80 proof or above should be good. If you want an alcohol-free extract, you can use a liquid of 3 parts glycerin to 1 part water. The quality of liquor doesn't matter too much, but do use good vanilla beans, the best and freshest you can find. See my previous video for shopping tips. While it looks nice to have the whole pods in the bottle, cutting them into pieces makes sense. Even with cold brew coffee, you don't just put whole beans into water. You still grind them first. The increased surface area exposes more of the bean, better extraction. The ratio of beans to liquor is probably the most important part. Obviously, more beans will get you a stronger flavor, but it's not that simple. Beans are graded on size and appearance. Grade A beans might be twice as large as grade B. We could go by FDA guidelines and do a little math to figure out a number by weight. Regulations state each gallon of extract must use vanilla constituent of 13.35 ounces of beans. That works out to 0.83 ounces of beans per cup. This would be much easier to calculate if we used metric like the rest of the world. Given an average weight of 8 beans per ounce, that's about 7 beans per cup to meet FDA standard. So I think for homemade, 6 to 10 beans is good. 6 if you have larger grade A beans like this, 10 if you have smaller beans like these ones. Shaking the bottle every week or so is common, but not really necessary, especially if you've cut up the beans first. You can just let it sit. I think 2 months is a good minimum time to wait before using. The longer it sits, the stronger it'll be, and you can keep the beans inside as long as you want, but it does make sense to strain and remove them after about 6 months, at which point they've probably given up the best of their flavor, and this leaves you a pure liquid with no solid pieces. After that point, you wouldn't want to refill with more liquor, that would just dilute it. Unless you add more beans into it to get more flavor, you could keep one jar going forever. Or if you want to get some extra use from the beans, you can pull them out at any time between 2 to 4 months, dry them out, and toss them in a jar of sugar to make vanilla sugar. Or you can get a second batch of extract from the same beans. It'll just take longer to get to full strength, and it really would be best to add a few fresh beans to give it an extra boost.